Okay, let's unpack this. We've got quite a stack of sources here, research papers, industry reports, notes on the latest online trends, and they're all pointing to something huge happening, in how we find information online.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about a shift way beyond just getting that list of links when you search for something.
Exactly. For decades, the standard search engine, I mean, it was revolutionary, right? You typed a query, it gave you a ranked list of websites.
And then you did the work of clicking through, reading, putting all the pieces together yourself.
But that world is changing, and pretty quickly, it seems. Now we have generative engines, GES. You hear about things like Bing Chat, Google's SGE, Perplexity.ai.
Right. And these aren't just finding information. They're actively, generating answers for you, synthesizing facts and insights from multiple sources.
And presenting them sometimes in a really neat way, maybe even with visuals.
And critically, unlike maybe some chatbots that just invent things, these generative engines aim to ground their answers in those sources. They give attribution, or try to.
That's a key point. So the workflow described in the source material, it sounds pretty interesting. How does that process typically work, based on the research?
Well, think of it a bit like a super smart research assistant working incredibly fast. First, when you ask a question, there's a model that figures out the precise intent.
Okay, what you really mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It might even rephrase it internally to make sure it's clear. Then it sends that refined query off to a search engine component, basically scanning tons of information, pulling back relevant sources.
So far, sounds a bit like traditional search.
Sort of, but here's the twist. Instead of just giving you that list, another part of the system basically speed reads those sources.
It summarizes them, like pulls out the key bits.
Yes, exactly. It extracts the key pieces of information, the nuggets that directly answer your question, and then a final model takes those summarized points and weaves them into the full, coherent response you actually see.
And it knows where the info came from, ideally.
Right, noting the attribution. That's the goal.
Got it. So it's not just finding documents, it's extracting and synthesizing the information inside them. And that feels like the core difference here. These GEs use large language models. They understand nuance, not just keywords.
That's absolutely the key shift. They're trying to understand your query and the content on a much deeper level to actually formulate a direct answer.
And this, well, it has a potentially huge impact on content creators, right?
Yeah.
Publishers, businesses, anyone who relies on clicks.
Oh, absolutely. If a user gets a comprehensive answer right there in the GE response, they might not feel the need to click through to your website.
Which could mean a drop in that valuable organic traffic.
Precisely. And that potential traffic reduction is exactly why we need a new approach.
Traditional SEO is all about getting your site to the top of that link list.
Yeah, but if the user journey kind of ends with the AI's answer, being number one on links doesn't guarantee your stuff was even used in that answer.
Which brings us neatly to the focus of this deep dive. Generative Engine Optimization, GEO. Sounds like the new frontier.
It really is. At its heart, GEO is, it's about optimizing your digital content to increase its chances of being included, being visible within those responses that the generative engines produce.
So you're optimizing for the AI's understanding and how it builds its answer, not just for a link ranking algorithm.
You got it. It's a different target.
So how are researchers actually starting to measure this? It feels like a new challenge.
Yeah.
How do we know what optimization methods even work in this, GEO world?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the source material points to some really interesting work happening there. They've actually developed benchmarks to test different GEO strategies. One notable one is called GeoBench.
Okay, GeoBench,
Right.
a benchmark data set.
Mm-hmm.
How comprehensive is it? What's it cover?
It's pretty substantial, 10,000 different user queries. And they're designed to be really representative of how people actually search and ask questions online.
So not just simple stuff.
No, not at all. They pulled these queries from a really diverse set of sources. We're talking standard web search logs, academic questions, but also more complex things like debate-style prompts.
Ah.
Explain, like I'm 5 foot type queries, and even complex questions generated by advanced AIs themselves, like GPT-4. The idea was to make it a tough, real-world test bed.
Across lots of different topics and query types. Makes sense. You need that variety to see if an optimization works broadly.
Exactly.
And how are they evaluating performance then? How do they measure if your content actually gets sort of noticed by the AI?
They're using specific metrics for that. One is called position-adjusted word count.
Position-adjusted word count.
Okay, what does that track?
It basically measures how many words from your source material actually end up in the generated response, and crucially, how prominently they feature. Like, are they near the beginning?
Okay, so more of your content higher up in the answer is better. Simple enough, pretty much. The other main one is subjective impression. This involves human evaluators looking at the answer and judging the perceived importance and visibility of a source within that overall response. Takes multiple factors into account.
Right, so one's quantitative counting words and position, the other's more qualitative human judgment. Okay, so using this benchmark, what did the research actually find? What GEO methods are showing real promise?
Well, comparing various techniques against just a baseline, unoptimized content, several methods really stood out.
Yeah, like what?
For getting more of your actual content, included that position-adjusted word count metric, including direct quotations from relevant sources, performed particularly well.
Direct quotes, huh?
Yeah, the study showed improvements around 22% just by adding clear quotes.
That makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah.
Makes it super easy for the AI to just grab that text and know exactly where it came from. Highly extractable.
Seems like it. And
Yeah.
clearly attributable. Also, including statistics showed strong positive effects. Yeah, concrete numbers. That boosted visibility by up to 37% on some metrics. It seems like solid data points are valuable for the AI when it's putting together a summary.
Okay, quotes and stats. That feels intuitive. What about just being clear about your sources within your text?
That was another big one. Explicitly citing sources within your content also showed significant improvements. The research mentioned a really striking example.
Oh, yeah?
For a query like, what is the secret of Swiss chocolate? Just adding citations led to a source getting a massive 132.4% relative improvement in visibility.
Wow, over 130%. That really hammers home how much these systems value being sort of grounded and able to point back to where information originated.
Definitely. Trust and verifiability seem key.
Okay, so including direct quotes, packing in relevant statistics, and clearly citing your sources within the text,
Yeah.
those seem like winners based on the research.
Yeah.
What about the flip side? What methods didn't work, or maybe even hurt?
Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, trying old SEO tricks like keyword stuffing, that proved detrimental.
Yeah, I figured that wouldn't fly anymore.
The research showed it actually performed about 10% worse than having no optimization at all. The AI models are just too sophisticated for that kind of simple manipulation now.
Right, and what about using, like, really unique words or complex vocabulary?
Also didn't show improvement over the baseline. It's not about using obscure language. It seems to be much more about structured, verifiable, high-value information. Clarity over complexity.
Okay, that gives us a good picture from the research side. Make your content, quote, friendly, stat-rich, clearly cited. Now, let's pivot to the practical side. What are the industry experts, the folks working with businesses on this stuff, saying creators should actually do right now?
Right, the actionable strategies. The industry sources offer some clear recommendations. A big one is to seek inclusion in well-known directories and databases.
Okay, why is that so important? Does the AI just, like, trust lists more?
GEs tend to view these established sources as highly trustworthy and, importantly, structured data points, easier for them to process. The sources even describe a kind of tiered influence.
Tiered, like levels.
Yeah, you can almost think of it like achievement medals. Gold tier might be high authority data and research, think major scientific databases, government stats.
Oh, yeah, super credible stuff.
Silver tier could include major business directories and reliable review platforms. And bronze tier might be more niche, industry-specific databases and aggregators.
So being listed validates you somehow.
Exactly. And it seems different GEs use them differently. The sources suggest some, like Claude maybe, might pull directly from these databases. Others, like Google's SGE or Perplexity, probably access this info indirectly. They find these directories through their regular search index.
Ah, so either way, being listed is crucial because it signals credibility, whether the GE sees it directly or finds it via search.
Precisely. It validates your information. And I noticed the sources mention you can sometimes pay for inclusion in some directories.
But it's not just pay to play.
Right. It still requires evidence of trustworthiness.
Yeah.
You can't just buy your way into being seen as credible. You have to actually be credible. Trust is fundamental.
Okay, directories make sense. What else?
Another strategy is to publicize your awards, accreditations, and affiliations.
Like if your company won an industry award or you have professional certifications, make sure that's prominent.
Yes, exactly. These things help the GEs establish your reputation and authority in your field. They're signals of expertise and recognition.
Do all GEs care about these equally?
Apparently not. The sources note they weigh them differently. For instance, when recommending entities, ChatGPT gives awards and accreditations maybe an 18% weight, Gemini around 15%, Perplexity less, maybe 5%.
And Claude.
Claude seems to integrate them more contextually rather than assigning a specific numeric weight, but they still factor into its assessment of credibility.
Okay, so it's useful to know which platforms prioritize these signals more heavily. And the sources made a good point that some fields, like maybe marketing or SEO itself, might have fewer formal accreditations compared to, say, medicine.
Right. So in those cases, other signals of authority might become relatively more important.
Mm.
It's about leveraging whatever verifiable signals you do have in your specific area.
Makes sense. What's next on the practical list?
Next up is seeking out positive online reviews. This is a big one.
Okay, reviews, like Google reviews, Yelp, that kind of thing.
The sources specifically highlight reviews on professional platforms. Think G2, Clutch, maybe industry-specific review sites like Angie's List for home services.
Why those specifically?
Because these platforms often have features that the GEs seem to value for trustworthiness. Key factors mentioned are things like verified purchases, proof the reviewer is a real customer.
Right, not just anonymous comments.
Trustworthy moderation and authentication processes on the platform itself. How recent the reviews are fresher is better, whether the review site is focused on your specific industry, and of course the sheer volume of reviews matters too.
Okay, so it's about getting reviews, but specifically on platforms the AI trusts, and where the reviews themselves have markers of authenticity. Quality over just quantity, but quantity helps too.
Precisely. And interestingly, the sources even rank the GEs where this seems most influential. Perplexity apparently puts the most weight on reviews, followed by Google Gemini, then ChatGPT, with Claude placing less explicit weight on them.
Good to know. So if Perplexity is a key channel for you, getting solid reviews on places like G2 or Clutch should be a high priority.
Definitely seems that way.
Okay, so we have directories, awards, accreditations, professional reviews. What else? Is traditional SEO dead?
Not entirely. Increasing Google website authority is still highlighted as crucial, even though it feels like an older SEO concept.
Domain authority, that 1 to 100 score.
Yeah, that trustworthiness metric Google uses. Because generative engines still often rely on search results to find potential information sources, that overall site credibility signaled by domain authority still matters a lot.
Right, you see sites like Google itself or Wikipedia way up at 90+ place, while, a small local business blog might be down at 25 or less.
Yeah.
How do you boost that score, according to the sources?
Yeah. They pinpoint two main drivers. Earning high-quality backlinks, that means getting links to your site from other trustworthy sites that already have high authority themselves.
Okay, links from reputable sources.
And maintaining a consistent publication schedule of quality content, showing you're active and reliably providing value.
So these traditional SEO fundamentals like link building and consistent content, they're still foundational because they help the AI even find and trust your site in the first place.
Exactly. They get you into the pool of potential sources the GE might consider. The other optimization techniques help you stand out once you're in that pool.
Got it. Anything else mentioned?
Just briefly, the sources also touch on the value of digital object identifiers, DOIs, especially in academic or technical publishing.
DOIs.
Yeah, those unique codes. They make specific pieces of content really easy to find, provide stable, persistent links over time, and help track citations, which, again, aligns perfectly with the GE's need for findable, linkable, verifiable information, makes content more AI-friendly.
It really sounds like implementing all this GEO stuff is a pretty significant undertaking for content creators and businesses.
It absolutely is. It requires focused effort, maybe even specialized knowledge, partly because it's such a new and rapidly changing field. The GE algorithms are constantly evolving, and the best practices are still being figured out.
Right. So, wrapping this deep dive up then, the core message seems crystal clear. The way information is found online is undergoing a fundamental shift.
No doubt about it.
And generative engine optimization, this GEO, it isn't just some niche tactic anymore. It's fast becoming the essential approach for anyone who wants their content to remain visible.
That's the takeaway. Generative engines work differently. Old SEO methods alone aren't going to cut it. The research tells us clear, quotable, stat-rich content with explicit citations performs well.
And the industry advice points to building that foundational authority and trustworthiness through reviews on trusted platforms, directory listings, earning those quality backlinks.
It's all about aligning your content, not just with keywords, but with how these AI systems Understand, synthesize, and critically attribute information.
with the goal being that crucial visibility right there within the generated response itself.
That's the game now.
Okay, as we finish up, here's something to maybe chew on. If these generative engines become the main way users get answers, potentially bypassing clicks to the original websites, how does that change the fundamental value exchange? Between the people creating the information and the people looking for it.
That's a huge question.
Yeah. What does the future of finding things online look like when you might get the perfect answer directly from an AI summary without ever actually visiting the site where that knowledge originated? What does that mean for everyone involved?